Thank
Sir,
you,
you're
Perry.
recognized.
I think probably all, or most, if not all of us, agree that we do face some challenges along the border. Border security is extremely important. And I support very strong borders, very strong border security. But I do have some questions because sometimes we agree with how to secure a border. And there are issues and problems that I have with Senate Bill 4. And first of all, the bill applies to the whole state of Texas. Is that correct?
The offense can be charged anywhere in the state of Texas. Now, you understanding, being a lawyer that you are, we didn't toss out probable cause. We still have those measures. So the idea of someone being arrested for an offense under this border away from the actual border is not likely. If someone is arrested in Lubbock, Texas for a DWI, an assault, a burglary, or a robbery, and through that process there's determined to have been an illegal alien in the borders in the interior, it could become a charge. But there's not a process in my mind that would ever allow a law enforcement official to enforce this specific law, these two new criminal offenses, without establishing a probable cause for some other offense first.
Well, and that's my point. So you do not have to see the unlawful entry actually take place along the border.
This would not be an offense you could assess and probably be successful without a civil rights challenge, because probable cause for some other offense will be where this potentially could come in interior to the border. Obviously, on the border, those officials that are arresting people will see those people come across between two ports of entry illegally. If you're not coming across the illegal ports, this will apply to you on the border. Interior, I don't know how an officer could get there. I don't think they can get there and survive a legal challenge. So, to your question, yes, it is statewide, but in practice, and you know this as an attorney, there's not going to be an option available to an officer unless there was another offense and probable cause established for that offense.
I don't agree with that analysis, because you can stop a car in Dallas or Houston or San Antonio for defective tail lights, for speeding. That's probable cause to stop a vehicle and ask questions, right? Would you agree with that?
Yep. I mean, I've heard the broken taillight theory in the past. It was Senate Bill 4 conversations for months, and it didn't happen. Hasn't happened.
Well, there's nothing that would keep an officer from asking the occupant of the vehicle, who is Hispanic, whether or not he crossed the border or he did an unlawful entry. I
was just handed a reminder that if a person confesses to being here illegally interior of the border, that's enough for assessment of the crime. So if there is a probable cause arrangement where someone's stopped or someone's caught burglarizing, that's one offense that will bring this conversation to light. But if someone volunteers that information, that's enough for an arrest.
So there's nothing that would keep an officer up in Dallas or San Antonio or Houston from asking a Hispanic driver who got stopped for speeding whether or not he is in this country lawfully.
I don't think that most officers would go there, and most of them are going to ask for identification, and it's probably going to be a Texas driver's license or some other license. If there's not that information provided, the officer already has other means to ask those other questions. So someone without identification, that officer already has an exhausting process. We're not changing anything in the criminal processes or the officer's world that you should expect them to be able to just randomly have that conversation. There's already systems in place that if someone can't produce IDs, then there's probably all kinds of conversations those guys, because people want to know who you are when they pull you over.
Let me ask my question again.
Yes.
There's nothing to keep a law enforcement officer from asking a driver whom he stopped, the officer stopped for speeding or whatever probable cause was used, from asking the occupant of the vehicle who is Hispanic whether or not he's in this state illegally.
It's the bill is intended for those that have entered the state illegally.
That's my point. So
correct.
Okay. So then we'll move on to other questions because I think it's very important. So here, you know, we do face a crisis along the border. We had 1.1 million people come across the border that were contacted or at least stopped by Border Patrol or DPS from Brownsville to El Paso during the last 11 months. 1.1 million, that's a lot of people, okay? So I agree that there's a huge challenge. But under your bill, it would allow, number one, someone that comes unlawfully across the border to be charged with a Class B misdemeanor. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right. DPS testified in the Border Security Committee that DPS would make approximately 75,000 arrests a year. 75,000. Charged with Class B misdemeanors. Okay? Where would you incarcerate those people?
We have, my understanding, reworked to make jail standard provisions and existing capacity in the TDCJ. We have 2 other detention facilities. And if that event were to occur, and the bill is designed to where it could occur, for sure, I'm not denying the fact that we could. We had 200,000 people come through here last month. I'll remind you, the 1.1 million is those that the Border Patrol saw. There's another 800,000 that filtered through the ranks. But the capacity issue, we will meet as a state if it's needed. That is my surety from the governor's office.
Well, let me give you some numbers so we can be realistic about what's happening here. Okay. TDCJ has a capacity right now that's 95% full, about 116,000, 118,000 people. So they can't take much more other than what we already are taking in terms of normal natural crimes that apply here in Texas. A Class B misdemeanor goes to a county jail. Class B misdemeanor, who's going to pay for that?
So again, this legislature, the last bill we filed and the $100 million the governor's trust funds that we gave him in this session is intended to meet these local costs in the event they incur them. And I've talked to the sheriffs and I've visited with my sheriff and I've asked them what they think about it. And they understand the problem we have. Most of them don't have a lot of excess capacity, but any cost incurred, I am assured that this legislature, and there's $100 million available today that we did. Realistically, we're coming up on January 24. We will be back in January 25, and we will backfill, as we always do, supplemental charges that we did not see coming for the locals not to have to eat that.
Senator Perry, let me give you the numbers again. You got 75,000 people that can be arrested by DPS a year. That's the estimate by DPS. That's a testimony. There are only 90,000 county jails available. 90,000. That's for all people arrested across the board, not just immigrants.
I know I'm telling you something you probably know. When I started the session in 2011, we had about 155,000 inmates in TDCJ. COVID, that number dropped substantially because of a lot of court backed up issues. And now we've recovered to about 140, but because of workforce and other shortages, we've actually shuttered, not completely closed and walked away from, multiple jails across the state that with some modification will accommodate easily another 20 or 30,000 people if we get those back up and running with the proper personnel. Now, until that happens and the need is there, and we should be thinking in those terms that it should happen, or would happen, or could happen, and start addressing it today before it is a problem. But I have all the confidence in the world that we will find a place to house if it is. Part of the reason that a first-time offense has the provision in there where they can actually be taken back to the border and return is to hopefully mitigate that capacity issue and learn and teach a lesson that we do have laws in this state that will lock you up going forward. So I'm hoping the deterrent alone will hopefully mitigate the 75,000 down to a different number, because a lot of these people probably are first-time offenders.
Senator Perry, be realistic. Do you really think that someone that comes from South America or Central America and goes through all the suffering, all the dangers of criminals and cartels and what have you, they pay thousands of dollars to be smuggled across the border, are going to say, okay, yeah, let me just walk back?
I can't make a decision about those now. If they're from some of those countries you named, I think they might qualify for an asylum process. I'm not sure which countries south of Mexico.
No, but they're coming from all over the world. Think about that. Why are they going to walk across back when, if you put them in jail here for a mandatory 180 days, and I'll ask you that question in a minute, because they're going to get 180 days mandatory under Class B misdemeanor. They get food, health care, shelter, a place to shower.
So you kind of ask a question that is the purpose of the bill. We don't know why some of these people are coming, and that in itself should be a point of concern. Because to your point, why would anybody want to go through that and put themselves through that if there's not an ulterior motive of possibly hooking up with cartels, being part of a smuggling operation, and dealing in drugs? So to your question, the answer for the bill is, if we knew why everybody was coming and they were coming here for right purposes, there is a process. They go across the border through a legal port of entry and start the conversation there, rather coming across between legal port of entries, to where then we have to raise the question, what is your motive and who are you and what are you here for? Because if they'll just walk across the bridge and have that conversation, if the feds are doing their jobs right, they'll continue to move progress in, or they'll be sent home at that point. So again, Texas is left to pick up the issue that has been created, and it's purely 100%. This says border security bill. It's really misnamed. It's a public safety bill. It's addressing public safety.
And I will agree with you, Senator Perry, that the federal government has not done its job in securing the border. I do not disagree with that. I agree with you on that. My point is, this cost of doing what Senate Bill 4 is proposing to do is being pushed on our local communities along the border. You have not talked to my sheriff. I know that for a fact. You have not talked to my county judges. I know that for a fact. I already know that the county of Hidalgo jail is full. They had to lease jail facilities at $15 million. 15. So now we're talking about pushing 275 or 75,000 people arrested for Class B misdemeanors, and the judge doesn't have discretion. If they are convicted, they have to serve 180 days, mandatory. They cannot dismiss the case, they cannot give them probation, or they cannot do it under any kind of supervision. That is a huge hit of money that our local taxpayers are being asked to pay. The state is not paying enough money to even cover that.
You being vice chair of the Finance Committee are very familiar with the fact that we have given the office of the governor $100 million to address this very issue, with a commitment that they will always get reimbursed if it is needed more. And I would even venture a guess, if it got out of hand quickly, then we would call a special session to address the funding needs. This state, number one, is going to protect its citizens. This is what this Senate Bill 4 does. Secondly, it is going to have the payment to protect its citizens, be it local or state, that administers the law to publicly safeguard our citizens. So the argument that it costs too much, I don't know how much is too much when you're having 5 Texans a day on average die from fentanyl. I don't know how much too much to guard public safety when you're having human trafficking and cartel enterprises step up every day and creak and cause havoc. I don't know how much is too much when you have a human trafficker take a 10-year-old and have them raped for profit 10 times a day. So at that point, the cost of what it takes to protect the citizens is not a concern that I've heard from the state of Texas, nor nor the local officials that we're asking to help with this process, because they can take it to the bank that they will not spend any dollars at the end of the day once this need is made aware of.
We understand all the crimes that are being committed, and we prosecute those crimes. And that's not what I'm talking about. You're not answering my question exactly about the cost involved. I am on Finance Committee, and we know about the money that's being appropriated for border security. But the reality is that we have not put enough money to cover the cost that will be incurred by our local public officials along the border, our counties, our sheriff departments. This is a huge hit. I think Harris County alone, it's estimated it will cost them $15 million, just to house all this arrest that could happen in Harris County alone. I mean, that's $100 million is not even near enough to be able to reimburse counties. Let me just give one example, if I may, because it's a big issue to me. If we're going to do this and pass Senate Bill 4, then we ought to incur and pay for the cost up front on estimates, not wait to get reimbursed, because otherwise the reimbursements will not be able to cover the cost and the burden that's being placed on local border counties and other counties across the state if this law becomes in effect and is really put in place and arrests are taking place. Because, again, they are mandatory. The misdemeanors are mandatory. I mean, I'll stop at that.
I'm with you. I don't think anybody should bear the cost of a state initiative to safeguard its deals except the state. I can tell you there's not a member on this floor, D or R alike, that will not commit to reimbursing the locals if that need occurs, and if they need it quicker than the next session. I have all the confidence in the world we will step back in this chamber and address that need immediately. But you almost make the point for me that we have so many people that are coming into this country that potentially could cause wreak and havoc and harm, and the idea that we don't have enough space to lock them up should be a deterrent for doing this initiative. I can't get there. I'm not going to go there. I can no longer let what we're letting through the system and acknowledge that, well, they're going to do something on that level, I hope, only to find out it was a catch and release avenue. We have to start sending a clear message that Texas is no longer going to be a place where you can walk in illegally, do whatever business you feel like you should do, or be a part of whatever enterprise that you can that is harmful and not have a consequence for it.
I think, what I'm talking about is the cost. If we're going to talk about cost,
we're going to cover the cost.
Hold on. I'm sorry, but we're talking about $100 million is
I hear
frankly,
you.
It will not cover.
I argued, if you'll remember, when we were talking about the $1.5 billion that we put on the wall back a week ago in finance, if you were listening, what I was saying was, we've got a bill coming, and it potentially could cost more money, so maybe we'll want to wait on that. We've done the infrastructure bill, but in that conversation, I remember, and Chairwoman Huffman said clearly, and I heard Government Sarah Hicks say, we will take care of any cost that this initiative incurs. So I'm
not going to belabor the point, but there's not enough money that we appropriated to cover this cost right now.
Not today, but it can be.
I'm just telling you what it is. I have talked about my constituents. I understand that this is a big issue for all of us, border security, and we ought to have a strong border and defend our border. But all I'm saying is the cost is being shifted to our local communities, and we're not in agreement with that. Well, I'll move on to another issue.
And I would say it this way. We will have spent almost $12 billion with the passage of that bill that we passed off today. And I will tell you, this is the best money that we have spent as a state going forward to try to provide an actual deterrent and a tracking of those folks that are coming in. So I hear you about the cost. I'm concerned about the cost. But today, we have provided funding to do what we thought we needed to do. This is one more avenue, one more option to try something different so that we get a different impact and a different result and a deterrent.
Our local communities along the border, and we live there, we work there, we have our families there.
I will work with you hand in hand to get them reimbursed.
Let me finish, please. Yep. We don't agree with the cost that's being shifted over to our local taxpayers.
I don't agree that it should be shifted either.
We agree to disagree, and that's what's happening.
No, I don't disagree with you. I don't think we should have any cost assumed, absorbed, or shifted at the local level. And I'm just telling you, I don't hear anybody not committing to reimburse those communities when that happens, if it happens.
Well, I don't see it happening. One more question on this, and it's an important one. On affirmative defenses that are provided in the bill itself, you do not, that can only be asserted in actual court, right? You can't say if a police officer stops you and you tell him, well, I'm right now exempt under DACA, the police officer still has to go and arrest you for whatever reason, because of the charge of unlawful entry. They can still arrest you, but if you provide the affirmative defense, it only applies when you're in actual court.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, and you're correct on that particular exemption. What I'm also told, though, if you are a visa, if you have a legitimate work permit that you do have on your person, I was told this, I asked this, if it's not true, then the information was wrong, that you do have on your person documentation that you're here on visa status. Now, whether that's true or not, that's what I was given the answer when I asked that if someone's a agricultural worker, for instance, in my area, and they show that they're on work permit, that there is documentation available, probably by the employer or on person, that person's legal and there's no further action needed. That's what I've been told. But to your point on the federal, if you're truly an asylum candidate and you didn't have that, obviously that was part of the process you're in of, that would be vetted out there at the magistrate level.
Thank you, Senator Perry.
Thank you. I appreciate the questions.
Thank you, Senator.